Hello friends, welcome to another segment from my series on the cholinergic system. Today I will be introducing you to the first half of the agonists of the nicotinic cholinergic system that I wanted to draw your attention to. To begin, we have to go to South America. In South America, there is a poison dart frog that has been called Anthony's poison dart frog. It has an alkaloid on its skin called epibatidine, which is a chlorinated alkaloid that produces interesting effects when ingested by other animals. So in particular, it causes paralysis. Well, it causes numbness, paralysis, and death by asphyxiation. What's interesting about this alkaloid is that the numbness it causes is profound, which inspired researchers. Oh, by the way, this poison dart frog has never been used for poison darts. And also it gets this alkaloid from insects it eats. So if you keep it at your, like as a pet or something, it won't have the poison. But anyway, back to what we're talking about. So this alkaloid that's on the skin of the poison dart frog, it has such a profound analgesic effect that is actually 200 times more powerful than morphine, but does not cause habituation or addiction. And it inspired researchers to try to find analogs for it that would be less poisonous but maintain the same kind of analgesic effect that is what causes the numbness. What's interesting about this poison as well is that its main numbness causing effect seems to be through its stimulation of the alpha 4 beta 2 category of nicotinic cholinergic receptors, which, as you'll remember, is the main category also stimulated somehow by nicotine. Now, it also, unfortunately, stimulates the muscarinic receptors, which is where it gets its toxic effects from. So researchers wanted to isolate the nicotinic cholinergic effects away from the muscarinic cholinergic effects to try to find something that could be pain relieving like opiates, or it's actually way more powerful than opiates, but less habit forming. So the first analog that was created was called epiboxidine. Epiboxidine had 1/10 of the power and numbness, and the 1/10 of the analgesic effect. But it had less effect at the alpha 4 beta 2 receptor, that's the main target of the poison dart frog's poison. However, it had the same effect on the alpha 3 beta 4 receptors, and it was still toxic, unfortunately, which stopped its trials with the substance. Now, leaving the poison dart frog for a second, this frog still inspired 3 more chemical analogs. Now, the other 3 analogs that were developed, inspired by the Anthony's poison dart frog, were all created by, I mean, there are more than 3, but there are 3 that I want to draw your attention to. They were all created by Abbott Labs, and their names begin with ABT, and then they have a number. The first one is the least attractive of the bunch. It's called ABT 594. ABT 594 still stimulates the alpha 4 beta 2 receptor, and it stimulates the alpha 3 beta 4 receptor of the nicotinic cholinergic receptors. But it still had some side effects, particularly GI distress, it seems. So it was not the work was halted on this compound. A second compound that was more interesting is called ABT 418. Now, ABT 418 does not stimulate the alpha 3 beta 4 receptor, but it does still stimulate the alpha 4 beta 2 receptor. It stimulates the alpha 7 receptor, and uniquely and interestingly, it stimulates the 5-HT3 receptor, which is a serotonin receptor. So it has neuroprotective effects and anxiolytic effects, meaning it decreases anxiety because of its stimulation of the serotonin receptor. It was researched for possible application for Alzheimer's disease patients as well as for ADHD, sufferers of ADHD. Now, and even more interesting, of course, the reason why I say even more interesting is because I don't really like any drug that directly stimulates the serotonin receptors, because it tends to cause a downregulation in serotonin receptors. The reason why, that the most popular antidepressants are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors instead of a drug that actually directly stimulates the serotonin receptors is because of that exact reason. So this drug, ABT 418, may be attractive to people who want to use it in the short term. Although, of course, it would be very hard to procure. You'd probably have to have a chemist make it for you. But anyway, so it's not that interesting to me because of its direct agonism of the ABT 418, but it shows the progression. There's less side effects and more targeted effects on the individual receptor types. ABT 089, on the other hand, is quite attractive. So ABT 089 has a high affinity for the same receptor type that nicotine affects the most, which is alpha 4 beta 2. So now we're getting to a synthetic analog that has a similar quality of nicotine. It also has a partial agonism for the alpha 6 beta 2 receptor, and it does not, unfortunately, I think, in my opinion, agonize the alpha 7 receptor, and it does not agonize the alpha 2 beta 4 receptor. Interestingly, unlike the other analogs, it is well tolerated, and it is being used in trials with ADHD patients. It has, of course, the neuroprotective effects. They all have neuroprotective effects on the dopaminergic neurons in particular, but generally neuroprotective effects, and it improves attention and concentration. So that's all I have to say now for the first half of the agonist. In the next episode, you'll see the other agonists that I find interesting and to discuss. Of course, keep in mind that I am not suggesting that any of these agonists are necessarily preferential to nicotine, because I'm not quite certain that any of the nicotinic cholinergic receptors are receptors that we don't want to agonize, but rather what I would like to do is agonize the muscarinic M1 receptor in addition to the nicotinic cholinergic receptors. But we don't need to get into that now. We'll do a more opinionated video after I'm done with the series. So I'll see you next time, and check out the blog post below. Thank you so much for listening.